Welcome back to the Harchava Podcast. This episode is a recording of our Embodied Chassidus class that we run live locally here in Las Vegas from last week, which was my birthday Parsha, Ki Seitzei. Though it actually goes a lot into what Savo is all about also and the connection between the two Parshas. So if you're listening to this now during Parshas Ki Seitzei, it will still be relevant. And honestly, if you're listening to it whenever, there's a really deep topic in here around how we handle hard things and still know that everything is happening for us and not to us and for our greater good. And what does that even mean when we're going through things that we don't really want to be going through? So no matter when you're listening to this episode, I hope you find it meaningful and powerful. And let's go ahead and get started. Okay. Anyone want to read the super short summary?
This week's Sikha reminds us that the wars we face and the settling we long for are not two separate realities, but can be lived together. The Rebbe shows how our essence is always beyond opposition, and that Hashem desires our avodah to be done in ease and abundance, body and soul both nourished. Most radically, he reveals that the joy and the light of Geula aren't only future promises, they are here now, ready to be embodied and received in everyday life.
So that's the gist. The setup for this week's Sikha is they're looking at the fact that each week happens in a specific order on purpose. And also one of the things that we've talked about a lot in previous weeks is the emphasis that the Rebbe puts on the title of each Parsha. So basically the name of the Parsha embodies some sort of important concept in the Parsha. So when you combine the name of the Parsha embodying an important concept and the order of the Parsha is also, this week in particular, the Rebbe calls this out as like an interesting juxtaposition that is happening for the Parsha of Ki Seitzei, because in the morning we read Ki Seitzei, which is you go out and you go to war, and then in the afternoon you already start Ki Seitzei, which is you come into the land and settle, which is two very different, very opposite seeming names, like Ki Seitzei when you go out, Ki Seitzei when you come in, right? And then also just the content of the parshas themselves seem to be very, very opposite. So someone want to read, just like, you can just read the English translations of like those first two lines of those parshas.
Okay. If you go out to war against your enemies, and the Lord your God will deliver him into your hands, and you take his captives.
So that's Ki Seitzei, go out.
And then Ki Savo, and it will be when you come into the land which the Lord your God gives you for an inheritance, and you possess it and settle in it.
Right. So the main takeaway from the first part of this Sikha is really the juxtaposition of these two things, and that the Shabbos holds both of these seeming opposites. So you have war, going out to war, which is resistance and contraction and effort, like the work, right? And then coming into settling to like peace and calm and just the sense of ease and abundance. And the Torah, with this juxtaposition that I was pointing it out for us, is showing us that these are not separate states and that we can and we really should embody both of these things together. And so then the question becomes, how is that supposed to happen? Which is basically what the Rebbe goes into in the Sikha. So the setup for the Sikha is that question, is like, what are we doing here? Like, the names are opposite. Why are we putting them together? And the way these Sikhas are broken down, we often see the Rebbe leads with like 17 different opening questions. Mm-hmm. And then towards the end, he starts slowly resolving one after another by showing how usually they're not even questions, right? Is kind of how most of these get resolved. So the first question is like, these names are opposites. One is go out and one is come in. And then the content of the parashas is opposite. You're going to go out to war with your enemy, and then you're going to come to the land and inherit and settle in it. So the content themselves are opposite. And then he says, beyond that, like a level deeper than that, the service of like our own personal avodah that is represented by these two things is also opposite. So when we're talking about Ki Seitzei, going out, it's talking about the neshama going out of its source to do war with materiality. So what does do war with materiality? I mean, all sorts of ways to translate that, right? So the way that we translate it in these sorts of little shirim and in conversations that we have, and I think the way that the Rebbe really intends us to translate it, especially in these later sikhs, is that going out to war against materiality, against the world, is because they're seemingly opposites, and so there's going to naturally be resistance, right? Because the neshama would love to just like not have to deal with anything, and sometimes we have these days where we would love to not deal with anything, right? I would love to just like sit in bed and not deal with the world and pretend it doesn't exist. We have those days, right? And so the war is, can we get over that resistance and do what it is we know our neshama is here to do? That's the war, right? And then on the opposite side, we have Ki Seitzei, which is settling and not having that sense of resistance. It's about peace and about tranquility. And really, there it says, as in the times of Shlomo, meaning Beis HaMikdash, meaning Geula. So we have going into the world, war, exile, and then Ki Seitzei is settling into the land, peace and tranquility, Geula. And these are both being read on the same Shabbos during the week of Ki Seitzei. So then he says, one step deeper on the service side of things is that going out into the world, our neshama coming into the world to do war with materiality, to deal with that resistance, to deal with like materialism and life and figuring out how to get over the hump of not wanting to deal with any of it sometimes, is this concept of effort. And coming into the land and settling is this concept of reward. So if we had to summarize what these two parshas are about, it's about effort, and that's why Ki Seitzei has the most mitzvahs of any parsha in the entire Torah. It's about the effort, it's about the work, it's about the avodah. And then you have Ki Seitzei, which is like, we're just going to come into the land and settle it. And it's about the reward of that work, right? So those are seemingly two totally different states of being. Like, two different time frames in Jewish history is what it seems like. Why are we saying them and reading them on the same day? So the Rebbe says, this is like in the fourth sif already, the fourth like chapter of the Sikha already. So the first three chapters is just asking questions. And the fourth chapter, the Rebbe gets to the beginning of the answer, which is to say that the beginning of Parshas Ki Seitzei is read, the fact that it's read after and in continuation to the reading of Ki Seitzei is because it is an explanation of Ki Seitzei. So the fact that we're reading Ki Seitzei after Ki Seitzei is because it's an explanation of Ki Seitzei, that also in the service of war, when we go out against our enemy, meaning when we're dealing with resistance and we're dealing with the effort and we're dealing with the things that we don't necessarily always want to do, that also has to be in a manner of peace and tranquility, in a sense of coming into the land. Right? So the fact that they're read together, the Rebbe is saying, is because they have to coexist at the same time. Sounds nice. How do we do that? The way that we begin to do that is by looking at something that is mentioned in Parshas Ki Seitzei itself, which is the command to pay a worker the same day that they work. Okay, so it says, pay him his reward, or that wage, on that same day. And from this, it's understood, the Rebbe is saying, that Hashem is giving us our reward the same time we're working, the same day we're working, the same time we're working. We're not just like working so that one day we get to Geula. We're getting reward the very same day that we're doing the effort. So it's not even like that there can be. The Rebbe says there must be, and there is the reward given on that same day, on that very same day, as the effort. Now, that's a partial explanation. And then the Rebbe segues into another question. The question being that when we're talking about the entire Parsha of Ki Seitzei, going out to war, that's speaking specifically and only about an optional war, not a war that is commanded. Right? So if it's like a necessary war, like one of the nations that Hashem says you must go and wipe them out, it's a commandment, the things that are talked about at the beginning of Ki Seitzei do not apply. They only apply for an optional war. So the question there is serving Hashem optional? That we're going to get the reward the same day, the way it talks about in Ki Seitzei? Continuation of that question, a person gets paid when they choose to take a job. Right? There's this concept of like, we are the servants to our master. Those servants do not get paid. Right? So why are we talking about a reward coming the very same day as the effort when, similar to Ki Seitzei being an optional war, Is it optional to be the servant to our master? That we're getting paid for the job? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So the way the Rebbe starts to resolve this is by pointing out a key concept in Chassidus, that we are a chelek Elokah. Okay? So if we are a chelek Elokah, if we believe that we are actually a piece of Hashem, that the Jewish people and Hashem are completely one, and if we believe that he consulted our neshamas before he created the world, which is something that is a translation of the beginning of Bereshis, that we were consulted, and if we think that the entire purpose of the world is to make a dwelling place in the lower realms for Hashem, which is also for ourselves, because we're also part of Hashem, then this entire journey down into the world now becomes a choice of ours that we made. Because our essence and Hashem's essence is one essence, and the whole point of everything, the whole point of all of creation, the whole point our souls came down into this world was to create a dwelling place for godliness in the lowest realms. Our souls chose to come down here in order to help achieve that, because that was the whole point of everything, and we were consulted before the world was even created. So really, it's an optional war. And that means that every war that we're going out to, every time we're encountering resistance, every time we're coming across a challenge, this is very personal right now, every time we're coming across a challenge, those things are happening as part of our choice, which is really, really uncomfortable sometimes. And this is like this concept of like, in the business world, the business coaching world, we talk about like radical responsibility, taking 100% responsibility for your life. Well, not everything is in my control. No, also those things are in your control. That's what they're saying right now, because you chose to come down here, and everything that is happening for you and not to you, so that your soul can accomplish what it's meant to accomplish on this planet.
So, in essence, like, we agreed to the challenges that we are facing.
We agreed, and not only did we like agree, but like in some way, shape, and form, our neshama came up with these challenges for ourselves, because we knew it's what we needed in order to do our job here in the lower realms to make this world exactly what it's supposed to be. Which, again, is like intensely personal right now and intensely challenging to deal with when stuff happens that you really don't want to have happen. Right? And like, this was, I think, part of our whole process through the miscarriage, is like realizing like, there is some part of this, as weird and as awkward as it sounds, that is happening for us. And like there are blessings we're going to get out of this that we would not have gotten before. There are choices that we're going to make in our lives that we would not have made otherwise, that are going to be for our ultimate benefit. And it's like so hard to even think that way when you're faced with something like loss. And at the same time, the Rebbe is pointing out to us that when we're able to think that way, when we're able to see that Ki Seitzei and Ki Seitzei are really the same thing, that allows us to have that tranquility and that peace while we're dealing with the war and the resistance and the challenge. Then the Rebbe goes off on a really deep Kabbalistic bend that we're going to skip over a little bit just for the sake of time. And then we're going to come into that concept of the effort and the reward, and the effort and the reward being happening at the same time, that we're not working for something in the future, that we're working for something that is paid out the same day. So there is a concept discussed in the Torah by the Alter Rebbe, that the main part of the reward for our mitzvah is like, yes, we get a taste of the world to come and we do a mitzvah. Beautiful. The main part of the reward for our mitzvahs is locked in a box. That's the phrase that the Alter Rebbe uses. But that box, the Rebbe is saying, is already in the possession of the worker, because it has to be paid that very same day. And so it's like, I'm going to give you your reward. And it's in his chest, and the chest is locked. The Rebbe is taking it one step further and says that, moreover, it is in his or her power to open that box and reveal that reward whenever he or she wants. And that is a chiddush of the Rebbe on the Alter Rebbe's Likutei Torah, based on this concept that we're talking about of the effort and the reward happening at the same time, Ki Seitzei and Ki Seitzei happening at the same time, that also the war should be with this calm and with this tranquility. This is the concept of open your eyes and see, right? This is the concept of you have the power to open the box. And you can choose to sit and look at the box and say, but the box is locked, right? And that's like so many of us go through so much of our days just screaming Ad Masai, but not doing anything about it, right? And it's, again, going back to radical responsibility, it's really hard when we're dealing with challenges in our life to say like, no, I'm going to do something about this that's going to shift the entire outcome and perception of everything that's going on right now. But the Rebbe is saying you have the capability to open the box whenever you choose and to enter into that Geula state, that Mashiach energy at any point in time, where the reward actually is revealed to our eyes, that the divine light and the peace is revealed to us at any state in time. I think the next piece is this one, if someone wants to read it.
The Rebbe on Avodah and ease, Sifai Ki Seitzei. The main thing that the Avodah is amidst ease and comfort in the simple sense, ease of the soul and ease of the body, which is achieved through the Holy One, blessed be He, giving to every single Jew all that he needs materially and spiritually and with abundance. Takeaway. Avodah is not meant to be a constant struggle. Hashem desires you to live in a regulated safety, soul and body, to both resourced and abundant.
Right, and so the way that this is possible for us to understand is, again, going back to this concept that the Rebbe says, the service of war has to be done knowing that in truth, it's not possible for an opponent to exist. Because everything that is happening for us on some level. Right? Everything that is happening as a choice on some level. And we can't always understand how I could possibly choose this thing that is happening to me. Right? But there is no opponent when you're talking about the level of essence, because this entire world was created to reveal godliness, which means everything that's happening in it is in some way, shape, or form part of the process of revealing godliness. And therefore there cannot be an opponent from that perspective, from the perspective of essence. And so when we see that, we're able to also see how, like, because of this, we can have both this war and this tranquility at the same time. But the Rebbe says, like, that's not enough to say, like, oh, when hard things happen, we can also be at peace. Like, no, the Rebbe says, like, actually, we can be done with that whole hard part also. And we can just have everything that we need physically and spiritually in a bountiful manner from his full, open, holy, and broad hand, first and foremost, as a necessity for the service itself. That we can go a step further and say it's not like a reward that we're getting paid the same day. It's not a result of the effort that we did. We need this stuff in order to do our jobs, right? And when we're able to see everything that's happening for us and every challenge that we have is in order to serve Hashem, and in order to serve Hashem in the best way, we need certain things, both physically and spiritually. And when we see it from that perspective, then we're able to say, like, hey, Hashem, this is what I need. I need this much money. Gotta have Tishrei. Gotta make it work. Make it happen, right? And we're able to expect that Hashem is going to fulfill our needs physically and spiritually, and that it should not only be a spiritual reward, including the revelation of Hashem's infinite light, as amazing as that is, but also a physical reward, right? And that it should be good and delicacies in the physical sense as an outcome of the revelation that we're creating in the world by seeing that it's all one and the same. So again, our ability to kind of put on Geula glasses and see the world through this Geula lens is what allows us to say, like, no, we can expect physical bounty now. It's not just in the future, because everything we're doing here is to reveal godliness. So give us what we need to reveal more godliness, right? It's part of what we need for the service. And the service and the reward happens at the same time because we're seeing that all of the service is really all of the reward, and all of the reward is really part of the service, and it's all really one and the same thing. Yeah, so the next part of this, the Rebbe ties into, as he very often does, like whatever's going on in the calendar. Especially the last few years, the Rebbe puts a lot of emphasis on the month that it is and the year and the acronym for the year and the specific date of that, and like whether that day falls on a Thursday or on a Friday. Like there's a lot of very specific date emphasis in a lot of these sifas. But one of the things that the Rebbe brings in relation to the year 5751, which is Hey Sinase. Sinase means to lift up, like a nase, like something that is exalted. And the Nisuin, the lifting up of the Jewish people, and Hashem in the era of Mashiach, which he brings the Yalkut Shimoni. So I don't know if someone wants to read this part here, where he like talks a little bit and then brings the Yalkut Shimoni, number 3.
Okay. The Rebbe on Geula and Mashiach. Both as regards the revelation and coming of Mashiach, the distinction between these two concepts will be explained separately, God willing. And as regards the wedding of Knesset Israel and the Holy One, blessed be He, in the Messianic era, and in the words of the Midrash, Yalkut Shimoni, the year Melech HaMashiach is revealed in him, he stands on the roof of the Beis HaMikdash and says, humble ones, the time of your redemption has arrived.
All right, so this is the very famous Higia Zman Gulaschem. The Rebbe is saying, like, the time of your redemption has arrived, the Geula is here already. And since we find ourselves, the Rebbe is saying this, he adds on to the end of this, and since we find ourselves in the last month of the year, it's not possible to delay this any further. Like, all the times have already come, we've already done all of the work. He talks about in a lot of these sifas that, like, the Avodah was already finished in the times of the Frierdiker Rebbe. There's nothing left to do. We already polished all of the buttons even. Like, it's literally just open our eyes and be aware of the fact that we have the ability to open the box here, that everything is already ready, and the fulfillment of the promise is largely dependent on us being able to make this perspective shift ourselves. But there's a footnote where he continues to bring that Yalkut Shimoni. He keeps going with Yalkut Shimoni. Do you want to read the footnote?
And this one I hear.
Yeah.
Okay. And if you don't believe the Aviyah Ma'alai, at the same time the Holy One, blessed be He, shines the light of Melech HaMashiach and of Israel and of Yisrael, and they all go to the light of Melech HaMashiach and of Yisrael.
Right, so this is from the Midrash Yalkut Shimoni on Nach. I think it was Yeshayahu, I think, was where this particular Yalkut Shimoni was from. Basically, the key point here is, like, sometimes we don't believe it. We don't believe we have the ability to open the box. We look around and we don't believe that it's Geula because the world looks crazy still and things are happening that should not be happening in the full revealed era of Geula and Mashiach. So how can we look around and actually believe that Geula process has already started? How can we believe that we have the ability to tap into Mashiach energy when the world looks the way that it does? And the Rebbe brings this footnote here. If you don't believe that this is so, see my light that's shining upon you. Right? Meaning that the Rebbe is saying, if you don't believe it, just like believe it because I'm saying it's time to believe it. Mm-hmm. So sometimes we need someone that has more faith in us than we have. Mm-hmm. Right? And that's what coaches are for, or mentors, or mashpia. Like, we need someone that can say, like, no, you actually can do this. And they can, like, kind of coach us through the process. And the Rebbe is saying, like, I know you can do this. And if you don't believe in yourself, believe in me saying that you can do this. Mm-hmm. Right? And let the light that I'm shining right now be proof that it is possible. Like the Rebbe was living in the Geula era, then he'd come back down into Gullus to talk to us, right? And so he's showing us, like, it's possible, and I believe that it's possible for you. And if you don't believe yourself, then just believe in me. Mm-hmm. Who believes in you that this is possible, right? Again, lots of calendar stuff in here going on this specific day of the calendar there. And then he gets at the very end in, 15, in Tesvav, that action is the main thing, Ma'aseh V'Ikra, right? And so he gives 3 suggestions here for ways to, like, make this practical. Some of these are related to things that we skipped in terms of the calendar, but I'll read through them quickly anyways. The first is to publicize in every place that we are now at the end of our toiling. We're done with the effort, we're done with the service, we're done with waging war, and we're at the beginning of the era of the payment of the reward, which is the reward of the righteous, that we're going to come into the land and inherit it and settle it. And accordingly, all of our service must also be done in that way of settling. Meaning we're kind of in this gray area. It's like we're done with the service, but you're telling me there's still service. It's because it was a process, right? We look at Yetzias Mitzrayim, they left Egypt, and they wandered in the desert for 40 years, and all sorts of non-Geula stuff happened in the desert for those 40 years that they were wandering, even though they already left Egypt. Mm-hmm. And then they got into the land, and it was like another 400 something years before the Beis HaMikdash was built. Mm-hmm. That Geula was a process. We are in process. And so we left Mitzrayim, and we are in the process of entering the land and settling it and building our Beis HaMikdash and entering into a full Shlomo style, the way he said here, Shlomo style Geula. Like, it's in process, and that means that sometimes we're in this messy middle, right? But even when we feel like, oh, there's more service to do, know that the main part of the service is done, and whatever service is left should be done in a state of Geula, should be done in a state of calm and in a state of tranquility, in a state of revealing the light that is there, tranquility, joy, and gladness of heart. That this should be done also in relation to the service regarding matters that are related to the era of Mashiach itself, meaning studying Torah and learning about Mashiach and learning about the Beis HaMikdash and Geula should be done in a way of joy and tranquility. This is a big one for me because I feel like, again, the Ad Masai thing of just like, let's just scream and cry. Like, the Rebbe is saying that's not the way anymore. Like, there was a point in a lot of Jewish history where we had no choice but to scream and cry. Like, that was a lot of Jewish history. The Rebbe is saying that is not the way to do the service anymore. That even the service of learning about Mashiach, learning about Geula, and learning about the Beis HaMikdash, and entering into the stage needs to be done from this place of joy and tranquility. Also through arranging joys for bring-ins. So that's number one, suggestion number one. Suggestion number two was related to the date of that year, and Yud Daled, and Tomchei Tmimim, and that we should be lamps to illuminate. We should be lamplighters. And in addition to that, every Jewish house must be a house of Torah and prayer and acts of kindness. Every house must also be similar to the yeshiva of Tomchei Tmimim through learning Chassidus specifically. So just adding on a layer of Chassidus to everything that we do. And then the third suggestion was to publicize regarding the efforts in giving the Sukkot necessities for all that need it, because it's 30 days before the holiday. This was, again, 30 days, the 14th. So it was 30 days before the holiday of Sukkot. So adding in tzedakah to help those who need help for Rosh Hashanah and for Sukkot, so that we can all eat fatty foods and drink sweet drinks and send portions of food to those that do not have. And that through all of this, we should merit immediately that Hashem gives each and every Jew and Jewess everything that they need from his full, open, holy, and broad hand, and most certainly, in the most important matter, the true and complete redemption and revelation of Mashiach. So that is the Sikha. I included some integration prompts. I don't know if you guys want to use this as like discussion jumping point, or you can just take it home and have it for your own reference, but just kind of questions in terms of like, where do you feel war in your body life right now? So again, this is like resistance or challenge or things that seem harder to reconcile with Geula energy. And then where do you already feel settled and abundant in your life? And like, are there patterns there? So I think a lot of times there's like, we feel like we've got life put together and we're like totally on top of like one area. And then we get to like another area of our life and it's like, I wish I could just take some of that put togetherness and put it over here, right? So it's like, oh, my career is great, but I feel like I'm failing at parenting or whatever it is, right? And so finding those like areas and seeing like what patterns are in place and where can we pull more of the Geula energy from one area of our life and use it as like a template and a model to bring that into other areas. And then also just like reflecting back on the words of the Rebbe, that there should be like an ease of the soul and ease of the body, that we should have everything we need, not just spiritually, but also physically in an abundant way. Like, how does that land? Does it feel good? Does it feel a little uncomfortable? Does it feel not possible? Does it feel like the Rebbe is giving you permission to feel okay? Which sometimes we need. Sometimes we like, no, we should feel happy, but it doesn't feel like it's okay to be happy because of everything that's going on in the world. And did we need that permission? So that's basically the gist. I don't know if anyone has any like thoughts or reflections or questions. There's a concept of like, you choose your hard.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's hard work to go to the gym and work out or work out at home, but it's also hard to be not fit, right? It's like hard work to become conscious parents who are not just replaying generational trauma, but it's also hard to not do that and then deal with the fallout with your kids 5-10 years from now. Like we get to choose our heart.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's, very much related to everything we're talking about in terms of like, really it's all a choice. And
And it's a balance too.
and I think for, sometimes that stuff comes up like over the long run of like, I made a choice 10 years ago. Do I still want to be doing that? And sometimes it's like day to day. Like I was going to go to this place for coffee, but now I'm kind of feeling about going to this place. Like, and I feel like, for the smaller things, it obviously doesn't really matter. But for things that like do have a broader impact, one of the things that's really, really important is to make those decisions about whether or not you should change directions from a place of a regulated nervous system. Because anytime we're feeling panic or anytime we're feeling stress or anytime we're feeling overwhelmed, it's like the worst possible time to be making life changes. Like, it is so easy to just like be cycling around and around and around every time something gets hard, because again, that's the war, that's the resistance. And sometimes that resistance is coming up because our brain just wants to keep everything same and safe. Right? And sometimes that resistance is coming up because it's there to challenge us and make us grow. And the only way to figure that out is to look at it from a regulated state.